Welcome to In the Abyss, the 3.5 grumpy old bastards of the apocalypse. Because there might be a minimal contribution from Padre tonight. We'll see how the internet goes. You need to get that hamster running a bit faster.
No, they need to stop fucking spending their shitty oil money on crap fucking desert wank projects and actually put some fucking internet in.
Yeah, that as well. It's to stop you looking at unsavory stuff on the internet.
I've got a VPN for my VPN right these days.
See what I mean?
Whatever it is, it's not working.
Oh my god! yeah, fucking.
I mean, that was pretty insightful, I have to say.
Oh, it's like Bristol all over again.
yeah.
Anyway, we'll keep trying. We'll keep trying. We'll see. I just have to see how it goes. Anyway, yeah, we're looking back on April this week. There's a lot to get through, so we will crack on. We've only picked out 6 albums that we really want to talk about because there was just too much going on. There's loads of gigs and a couple of other odds and sods we want to talk about as well. So let's crack straight on, shall we? What's the difference? I'll tell you what. Let's start off a bit necro with one that the Voice of Reason brought to the party a couple of weeks ago. If I can pronounce this right, is it HEKSEBLAD? Is that right?
I don't know. I've not heard anyone actually say it in person, so I'm going to assume so.
All right, we'll go with HEKSEBLAD.
Yeah.
And an album
It
called
looks like
Kaya
Hexi-
Moorhen or something.
Yeah, Kai Moorhen or Moorhen
There you
or
go.
something like that. I don't know. It's a tribute to duck-type birds, isn't it?
I thought you were going to say
Yeah.
a tribute to DuckTales or something then for a minute.
Oh, well, you know, we're up for that.
Ain't very necro, is it?
Care Moorhen. Yeah, I don't know. Have a go at us if we pronounced it wrong. Have a go at me. I don't care. Yeah, I mean, basically, this is black metal. The cover is ridiculously black metal. Blue castle, black atmosphere. It's all very in the night side eclipse. But I heard a lot of positive stuff about it on the internet almost instantly. People saying this is amazing. This is potentially an album of the year and this kind of stuff. And I thought, well, I'll give it a go. I try to dip into the black metal stuff here and there if the word of mouth is good enough. And this is one of the best albums I've heard this year so far.
Oh, hello.
And for me to say that about a black metal album, it's something. Production wise, it is raw, it's nasty, it's savage, and it's got the black metal vibe that you want from that production without being shit. Basically, it doesn't sound unlistenable, which is what puts me off a lot of apparently genuine, true cult-ish black metal.
Yeah.
So you've got that going for it. Is that right? I can listen to this without, wanting to prick my ears open. And then you got the music, because again, black metal, a lot of it's a bit too harsh and dissonance in terms of melody, not a great deal to get a hold of. It's an acquired taste. Right off the bat, you've got a black metal band that sounds like they're almost wanting to be a bit new wobble. They've got those riffs, they've got those melodies, they've got that sort of positive, upbeat vibe, which is odd because they still sound like a black metal band doing all the vocals and the nastiness, etc., etc. But for the whole album, this is repeated and continued. There's riffs, there's melodies, there's tune, there's triumphant stuff going on, and the blend just sounds very fresh yet very natural. I'm listening to this thinking, this is fucking brilliant. And I shouldn't be loving this as much as I do because it's black metal and I'm generally quite choosy and cautious about my black metal. But after one listen, I was thinking, my God, this is something.
It's just necro enough, though, isn't it? It's not,
it is, yeah.
That was exactly my thought. But for me, it came up it just came up on random. I had the randomizer on, and which sounds more exciting than it actually is.
Yeah.
But everything you've just said there, I completely agree with. And as you said, it's just necro enough. The production is rough, it's ragged, so it retains all that energy, but the clarity is there, which means it cuts like a knife.
Yeah, what they've managed to achieve is weird. Like, I haven't passed any opinion on this album yet on our WhatsApp groups and whatnot. So the first time I listened to it, first song, I was like, no, I don't get this. Because I listened to it after something that had, polished and sounded great. I can't remember what it was, but I stuck with it. And by the time you get like a couple of songs in, your ears have adjusted to the production, because it's a production that I've never heard before. Because the guitars sound like they recorded down the bottom of a mine, but they're still really rich and thick and heavy. It's not like a fucking fly buzzing around in the bottom of a mug kind of thing. I don't know how they've managed to achieve it. This is what we mean by it's just necro enough, and it's listenable. There's melody in there, there's some folky elements and all that kind of stuff, which you get with black metal anyway. But the more I've listened to it, the more I'm really starting to like it. It's, in a time where, extreme metal is getting more and more extreme, something like this is coming along and it's completely fucking different. And fair play to them. It's a band that we've never heard of before. So
yeah, this is it. I mean, ultimately, you're making music, and I've never understood this attitude. Well, actually, no, I tell a lie. I do understand it. There's this attitude within the true cold black metal parts. We've got to be super punk and super underground, and we've got to make music that's unappealing to the mainstream. And as a result, it's got to sound unlistenable. And we're going to make ourselves enjoy it, because I can't believe people actually enjoy listening to some of the stuff that's out there. It is unlistenable bollocks, quite frankly. And it doesn't need to be. Black metal has its own sound, its own distinctive thing going on that separates it from a lot of the other subgenres. And there's no reason why it can't be super melodic as well as being what it is. And it feels like they've recognised that and saying we can get this balance much better and appeal to people a lot more, and still be a black metal band.
I think, and also, like, just listening to that, I'm thinking what they've done really is they've bridged the gap between the two ends of the spectrum. Really, I mean that's what it is. You might listen to one thing, something that's highly polished, highly stylized, and just it doesn't quite satisfy. And then equally, you've got that kind of rough sound at the other end of the spectrum. But what they've done is they've hit it in. I don't want to make it sound like a compromise, because it's not a compromise. It's just the right blend of ingredients.
Yeah, it is. And what throws it out even more is they're from fucking Michigan. Well, I just naturally assumed they were Scandinavian.
I know. I didn't know that. I didn't know. I never would have put a pin in Michigan.
I better check before I make comment. But yeah, they are from Michigan.
To be fair, it's just as cold there a lot of the time. So,
yeah.
It's
not grim.
Right by the Great Lakes. My goodness me! I mean, some of the NFL games I've seen up there on TV in the middle of winter, it's mental. It's interesting, because this isn't a black metal satanic pagan thing. This is a concept album about The Witcher.
There you go.
Wow.
So yeah, there's nothing off-putting in that regard. I mean, I haven't done my digging. I'd like to think there's nothing problematic about the band members elsewhere. So let's just remain positive and say, this is one to stick with.
Yeah, it's a fucking great album. And since you're talking of concept albums, we'll do another one. Not something we talk about very often on here, but not without slagging them off anyway. HORNDAL, Headhammer Man, came out right back at the beginning of the month. And they're playing Desert Fest in a couple of weeks in the Dev, which is really fucking cool, in the back of a pub. So I suppose sonically, I suppose you could compare them a little bit to Mastodon-ish in places. It's kind of doom in that sort of way. But
off
the bat, for me, they kind of like the I mean, I'm talking more about the way it hits in the first song. It sounds like High on Fire have merged with Clutch and have crushed themselves together, and it's a supercharged version of both.
There's a bit of swagger in there,
it does it develops from there. So we talk about that.
And it's the concept that is. I mean, I put it out on social media just after it was released, and if you go on their Bandcamp page, you can read the concept in full, the actual story. But I'm not going to do that because it's pretty long. But to break it down, it tells the story about a civil war breaking out in HORNDAL in Sweden, and the uprising of workers, and then this guy escaped to the US and became the head hammer man, and it's very long-winded, but it's such a cool fucking concept for an album,
And
the
so out there, so
yeah,
unique.
it's like it's so obscure. It's almost beyond the realms of black metal, but yeah, musically,
You can hear the threat of industrial action. It builds throughout the. It's not a civil war. It's just a general strike.
No, there is in the details. It does say there's a brink of a civil war was at the brink of breaking out, so it didn't quite get that far. But that's the story. So yeah, I mean, either way, it's a mad concept, but the music fits it. I've heard their stuff before, and it's like it's good, but it hasn't blown me away. But this album, again, not first listen, but second, third, fourth, and I've just kept listening to it. It's fucking brilliant.
It just gets
fucking brilliant.
better.
I don't know.
and better.
I wouldn't say it's a concept. I'd say like there's just a narrative to it. I mean,
No,
it's very much
they
like
have called it a concept. They've said it's a concept album.
it reminds me of Shostakovich's symphony about the siege of Leningrad. It's got that kind of vibe to it. With the kind of the music gathering pace as it goes through the different songs, like especially there's the intro, and you kind of get the idea that you're on the production line, as it were, and then like you've got I think it's the fourth song, fucking Scabs,
Like the Scabs,
where you can kind of like feel the kind of frustration and anger at the workers being bussed in to cover the picket line. Cross the picket line. So no, it's definitely very good. I mean, there's some good riffs on there. I mean, there's a lot of different different twists and turns as well.
Yeah,
So,
that's why I sort of liken it to Mastodon.
Yeah, I mean, for me,
definitely.
That the big thing was just how it develops.
Yeah, it's got a lot. It's definitely got a lot going on there with and similarities with Mastodon.
The second song in, Calling Labour, is the one that really caught my ear, because it's got that lick that goes all the way through.
Yeah.
It's almost a bit sort of glam.
I tell you what, that is so.
That's exactly
That's where they bring in like the organs, and so there's me saying, okay, this is kind of like I mentioned like High on Fire, Clutch, and then that second track hits, and they bring in the organ, and all of a sudden I'm hearing like Deep Purple.
Yeah,
it's just got
really
this big rolling kind of classic rock groove, but like this, like you said, that repeating refrain, and from that point on, it becomes this kind of heavy psych album.
Yeah.
If you've got, if you like bands like Woe Fat and Karma to Burn, like all of this is cycling through my head. I'm thinking, these, if you've got those albums in your collection, you're gonna like this, basically.
Fucking Karma to Burn. That's a name I haven't heard in a few
years.
Yeah,
that's a deep cut. That is,
yeah. But this, I was thinking about even Melvins. There are moments in here I'm thinking, it hits like a Melvins track, but there's a lot more kind of psychedelia going on. And I know we made this point about the first record we talked about, but great production.
Yeah,
it sounds like a band in a room. The drum sound is phenomenal. This great kind of jazzy open kit sound. You can hear the room. I know I bang on about this on this podcast a lot, but I love that sound where it sounds like musicians in the same space jamming.
Trust a fucking drummer to bring that up. But yeah, it's really cool, and I anybody who hasn't listened to it yet, give it a blast. It's out there on vinyl as well, so I'll 100% be picking that up. It's
I've kind of got the impression listening to this album that if ever there was an album, if this gets released on vinyl, which hopefully it does, this is an album that deserves some kind of like pull apart 3D vinyl case, with a production line on it, or workers or something, I mean, I'm thinking like even more than Jailbreak by Thin Lizzy,
a pop-up or something.
Yeah, like a pop-up. Yeah, you open the vinyl and there's a pop-up of some kind of industrial dispute, almost like a diorama. Or maybe they sell that as additional merch. It's like it definitely needs something like that.
Well, if you're listening, Horndal, there you go. There's your inspiration.
I don't know. I'm not sure they can get the chap who did Jailbreak in because he's a bit controversial at the moment. So
Is he? What's the
Yeah.
story there?
What's the
well,
story?
like I say, he's very, very left wing, very, very socialist, borderline communist, apparently. But he, as a result of his history with that, he's gone down the very pro-Russia, anti-Ukraine.
Great.
So he's very he's cheering on the Russian invasion, basically, from what I can see on his social media.
Oh, we'll leave him in his cave then.
Right, yeah. Moving on then.
Yeah, moving on. Should we do a couple of gigs, because it was quite busy for gigs as well, wasn't it? We'll quickly touch on our second show at Radio City Social, which was a fucking month ago. Can't believe how quick that's gone. So the Bleeding, Fracture Point, and Sanhedrin. Fucking great night, wasn't it? Absolutely fucking great night. All three bands turned it on, but the Bleeding especially, I thought were absolutely fucking outstanding.
Yeah,
Like, they really fucking delivered it. How the front man has got that fucking breath control, I don't know, because how fast he goes, it's just beyond me. But yeah, blown away by them. They were fucking brilliant.
and my first visit to Radio City Social as well. So I just want to kind of give them a shout out because I thought it was a great venue. First time I've been down there. Sampled their wares as well, which got me into all sorts of trouble. But you know,
Yeah.
all good-natured fun though, I hasten to add.
Yeah, of course. But yeah, great night, and yeah, shout outs to Fracture Point and Sanhedrin as well. I really enjoyed Fracture Point, and big shout out to James, the drummer. It's yeah, fucking.
We have to sort of give a shout out to their fans, because certainly they brought people up from London who
which is great.
Knew the set, knew the songs, got involved. That's what we want, and that's what.
Yeah, and it's always going to be tough, because you know we all live some of us live in London, on the periphery of London. We know what it is like to get people out of London and come and see shows elsewhere is never easy. So, you know, for those that came up, you know, massive thanks for coming. It's what helps us do this and support these shows and make them happen. We got, you know, the next one's only, what are we talking, 5 weeks away? The All Father show. We've just added a local band to that as well called Power Failure. Just been and supported Slapshot and Death Before Dishonor. So, you know, we've got 4 bands for the first time. We'll see how that goes.
Okay, I'm standing on the seats at the back. I think I'm keeping out the way.
And it's a floor show as well. So
yeah, no.
It's a new kink this time, but I'm sure it's going to be an absolute fucking blast. We've obviously done the Bristol Weekender. Anybody who actually managed to listen to that episode, thank you and well done. It was a massive achievement. Even if you managed to get halfway through, I'm impressed.
I'll be honest. I haven't. I lasted about 10 seconds because I just realised that you're clearly recording from inside a barrel.
Yeah, it was a very echoey room, but it does actually improve slightly as it goes on. I got about 20 minutes in. I was like, it's bringing back some memories.
I think it's best forgotten.
Yeah. But we will quickly touch on. We'll talk about FLAMEBEARER in a minute, because we'll talk about the album Brazen. But a couple of nights after that, Voice of Reason caught Wretched Soul in Canterbury as well. So they played in Bristol. You caught them in Canterbury, and I think they were one of the standout bands for the weekend for us. Were they any good in Canterbury?
Yeah. Well, I think some of the crowd were there for the previous 2 bands, so I think it had diminished slightly since then. But again, it's a pub, so we're not talking a huge venue where you notice that much difference. I'm really impressed with them. They've got this sort of good blend of power metal and old school heavy metal, with the choruses and the shapes and the fists and whatnot. Again, just very, very classic metal. I mean, obviously they've been doing it in their own time for the last few years. I think they said they played that venue in Canterbury for about 8 years or something. Apparently,
Something like that. Best part of a decade, yeah.
Yeah. So, but people didn't know them there. It was like a little Kent mini fest that night. But yeah, they know what they're doing. They're good at what they do, and that's what we need. More bands like that kicking about and doing the small venues and getting people out.
They're just like a slightly more aggressive new album, aren't they? It just touches of thrash, and it just gave them an edge. I mean, we said on the first night in Bristol that they should have headlined that night. think they were easily the strongest band of the night.
Absolutely. I mean, we said it in that crazy episode, but
Yeah.
you know, for anyone that can't put themselves through that, and you know, I completely understand. You know, we talked about they opened the show, but they should have headlined, and they played that opening slot as if it was a headlining slot.
Yeah.
You know, they gave it everything, and that's to be admired. And it, you know, it won us over completely.
Yeah, it did. We all went, "Oh, can we buy your record, please?" and all that, wasn't it? Yeah, it was cool. It was cool, and really nice guys as well. So yeah, big shout out to them, and hopefully they're a bit more sort of active going forward and play some more shows and whatnot. It'd be really good to see them again. Should we bring the mood down a little bit and talk about My Dying Bride?
Are they not dead yet?
Not yet. Well, that's the thing. I mean, to be fair,
how long have they been dying for?
Well, like I was interested to talk about this album because you know, it's a good album, but Immortal Binding, I should say, Immortal Binding, A Mortal Binding. Yeah,
that's
right.
That's it. You got it.
So interesting to me. So I've been listening to it, and it, you know, it's a good record. You know, it's a you know, a credible entry into the My Dying Bride canon. But the reason I wanted to talk about it is because of what followed, really, and just the fact that they released an album this month kind of got me thinking about them anyway. You know, they're a band that are kind of like, well, what, I don't know, 30 years into their career, over 30 years,
yeah.
And you know, before we sort of say anything about the record, I wanted to give them some acknowledgement that they were probably the first band I ever listened to. I don't know, they really opened my ears to what I would say like unconventional music. Like everything I'd listened to up to that point, like even if it was like Sepultura or Carcass, you know, it's still verse, bridge, chorus, guitar solo. You know, it follows that kind of pattern. My Dying Bride, a friend of mine had their Turn Loose the Swans album, and it was the first time I'd ever heard anything that was like, what the fuck is this? This sounds like nothing I've ever heard before. You know, funeral pace, really, really slow, like antisocial levels of slowness. You know, you could watch an episode of Baby Reindeer between every snare hit. You know, it's just
basically Oxford Street pedestrian slow.
Yeah, exactly that. You know, where everything else I'm listening to is like 120 BPM. You know, there are violins mixed in with the guitars. There are clean vocals. There are spoken word sections. There are these kind of death growls. So all this really interesting stuff. So I have to credit them with opening my ears to that and just sending me on a bit of a different trajectory. And you know, and I've followed them on and off over the years. And then they drop Immortal Binding, which is, you know, it's a good album, and there's a lot of what they did on, you know, back in the day with Turn Loose the Swans. Certainly the closing track, I would say, is a good example of that. But very quickly after the album dropped, they put out a press statement saying that they you know, all was not well in the band. And it just struck me as a really interesting story because they were kind of outed and they were like forced to make this announcement because Maryland Deathfest had announced the cancellation in sort of a quite a grumpy announcement, had said, oh, no, you won't have heard this yet, but they're probably going to cancel everything else too. And it turns out, you know, there's trouble at mill, as they say. And so, yeah.
Yeah.
So My Dying Bride have very quickly put out this statement saying, look, all is not well. The last few albums have been fraught with sort of personnel issues and fractures within the band. So I just kind of wanted to acknowledge them as a great band, and there's a question mark over the future now. So, you know, I feel a bit, you know, sad about that. And just kind of wanted to shout them out as a band that I embraced early on and have kind of opened my ears to a lot of great music. So that's what I wanted to say, you know, so, check them out.
My Dying Bride have brought joy to someone.
Yeah. Well, do you know what? They were one of the first bands that you know, their music is just completely fucking miserable. There's nothing like
There's no other way of
that's
putting it, is there?
all it does. You know, you think of other genres which kind of tap into, like, you know, they kind of, you know, negative emotions, the blues, you know, it's still quite a jaunty rhythm, you know, it's still got a bit of thrust to it. You know, you might think of
Who
other
would you
genres.
say they're similar to?
Well, if you imagine Paradise Lost slowed down and sort of poked in the ribs a bit and just made to feel really fucking miserable, then you've got
You're not doing it. You're not doing a very good job at selling this.
oh, look, seriously.
It's imagine
That's
how a
actually-
dog feels after about 3 years of a toddler just pulling on its tail constantly, and the dog knows it can't react. And
Right.
it just gets grumpier and
they
grumpier.
sound like 14 years of a Tory government.
With violins.
You know what
Yeah.
I noticed about this album, though? I mean, I'm not a massive My Dying Bride fan. Turn Loose to Swans is a bit of a classic. A Line of Deathless Kings in 2006. I really liked that album.
Yeah, yeah. Feel the
I-
Misery was another one for me, which was a recent highlight.
but they've never really sort of clicked. And I definitely get something from listening to this album. And it does sound a little bit like they don't want to be there, even more so than they do normally. It's a bit disjointed. The first track caught me a bit because like Aaron Stainthorpe's quite really aggressive and gruff on that.
Yeah, yeah.
And then it kind of just reverts to the usual My Dying Bride thing. And it just feels a little bit like they have had enough, maybe. And if it was personnel issues, I don't know. It just didn't feel, you know, like they had it.
I know, and I think that's why I kind of talked about that issue and that statement they put out,
Yeah.
because it does come across in the music. There's a gear that it doesn't quite hit.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, and
exactly
recent
that.
albums they have got there. You know, they can make some really spectacular music, but this time around, yeah, it does feel like they're slightly off the mark.
There's a bit of chemistry missing, maybe.
That's it. That's exactly
a bit
it.
of
It's
emotion
chemistry.
missing, perhaps. I'm not sure, but it's a shame because they are a legendary band. I mean, you say 30 years. I mean, Turn Loose to Swans was 93, wasn't it? So it's just over 30 years now since that came out, and they've had a hell of a career. So if it is the end, they can't really complain too much, I suppose. Well, they can, and they probably will, but
Oh, they write an album about it.
yeah, exactly. And that might be the catalyst of
It'd be,
they come back.
yeah,
Got something to moan about.
We need the misery. Maybe things are too happy in the band. Maybe they're all getting too well, and it's just you know, it's twisted the music in a direction that just doesn't suit them. I don't know.
Somebody offered someone a cup of tea once, I expect, and that was it. It just was. That's way too much positivity. You're being way too nice to me. That's it. Ruined everything. It's like a fucking massive attack. They're another one that always hated each other, and it worked. So if you start liking each other, the electricity just goes.
Do you know? I always thought Massive Attack was such a waste of a great band name.
It looks like the names. It should be a thrash band or a new band with spiky letters, and you know.
I mean, like, don't get me wrong. They've had their moments, you know. Yeah. But yeah.
All right, we're going off on tangents now. Right, shall we?
I remember.
Here we go.
So I just got to get this one. My A level politics teacher Miriam dated 3D from Massive Attack. I just want to get it in there.
Fucking hell, that's a weird claim to fame, but fair enough. I bet that was a fun relationship. Oh, getting echoes there now. Right. Anyway, back on it. Shall we talk about In Vain, Solemn? Because
yes,
I think we're all in agreement about this one. I mean, I'll have my opinion, but you know, crack on. Whoever wants to sort of dig in, because it's a very hard album to describe.
Yeah, it took me by surprise, this one, completely. I mean, they're like 5 albums into their career, and I'd never heard of them. You know, so again, another one just came up on random play. Season of Unrest was the track, and I guess, like, if you want a reference point, I think if you listen to Amorphis or Insomnium, bands like that, that's the ballpark that we're in.
Early Opeth, I get.
Yeah. But this is so my ears pricked up because like, song kicks off, and you know, it's all very metal and very cool, and then these amazing cleans come in, these clean vocals that just soar straight away, and then you've got saxophones coming in, Right. So from this point, you're like, okay, where are we going here? You know, where's this going to go? But as mad as that might sound, they tie it all together. They keep, you know, they keep it in the right place and piqued my curiosity. Basically, saxophone parts on that particular track actually remind me of Ulver's Perdition City. If anyone knows that album, it's a great kind of quite lo-fi. When Ulver was moving away from like the black metal stuff, you know, bringing in more sort of sampled sounds and you know, it was a bit more of an ambient thing. But the tone of that album, they could like in vain completely capture that on that section of the track. But yeah, kept me listening, and then you realize they've got so many ideas. There's so much going on this record.
Yeah, there's a songwriting craft on this, I think, and I think when you first raised it, you did a mention like there's touches of Devin Townsend's music in there, and I think that's that similar level of songwriting. It's just beautifully arranged. Even the brutally heavy parts,
Yeah,
doesn't sound sort of out of place. You know, listening to them, I get touches of Paradise Lost, early opens, like I said, even Emperor. Some of the clean vocals sound like Speed from Soilwork, which is definitely a compliment. There are proggy elements, but it's not progressive. It's, you know, the choruses are massively anthemic. You talk about that saxophone. It's like something out of the fucking Lost Boys, isn't it?
it's smooth.
It's really smooth and moody, and then bang, it just goes back into full on Black and Death, and shouldn't work, but it really, really does.
Yeah, I mean, it's not just the saxophone. The first bit that really took my ears in was on the opening track, "Shadows Flap Their Black Wings."
Flaps.
And through the song, I'm engaged because they're blending all these different things in. It is quite dark and doomy, but metally and a bit black and quite upbeat as well. But there's these. It's all been underpinned by these trumpets, just there in the background, and then there's a point later on where everything stops except the drums and the trumpets just emerge, dual powered, and it's all very King Crimson. And I'm thinking,
yeah,
hello, it's a clarion call, but it's just the way it blends out of everything and emerges, and it all feels very natural. And you get that from the entire album, where they're bringing these wind instruments into these very accessible extreme metal elements with lovely vocals and whatnot. I mean, it's an hour long, so it is a bit of work, and I'll be honest, I've still got some work to do on it, so it's still early days for me. But
I think that's probably part of the charm, though.
Yeah,
it's a rarity these days.
Yeah, but it's an album I want to listen to. But it's, again, I'll probably chop it up and listen to one or two songs here and there, I think, because that's how I take this stuff in better. But yeah, again, never heard of this band, and it's just nice to be surprised with something that's oh, I like that.
Well, it's funny because I when I was looking at it, I did notice that I had the previous album in my Apple Music library, so I'd obviously listened to it at some point, but it clearly didn't grab me in the way that this has, because I don't remember it. But it's memorable is the thing. There's something about this album. It's going to stick. We will 100% be talking about this album in December, because I think you'll listen to it again and again and again, and it will keep delivering something different.
Yeah, and I would say, like, you know, as we often do, you know, these albums come up and they, you know, the first thing we do, we're sharing them amongst, you know, our friends and passing them on to other people. And I'd say this album, above all others in April, is the one that everyone is kind of coming back with a message that says, do you know what? I can't stop listening to that record, or that was such a great shout. You know, I'm so into this. And everyone's doing the same thing. You know, they're just exploring it and spending time with it. And it is an album you can do that with. Like, another touch point it reminds me of is the last Enslaved record. You know, similar themes going on. They've got these unconventional instruments coming in just to kind of augment what, you know, at the heart of it is really kind of an extreme metal sound, but there's just different layers going on there.
No, it's very cool. I'm looking forward to just getting into it more and more and more, because, like Ant said, it does require a lot of listens, but every time you listen to it, something different sort of sticks out in the mix. So yeah, wicked piece of work. Hey, you know what? Do you know what time it is? We got a massive treat for everyone. I mean, contain your excitement, but a potential regular new sector, not at all thrown together at the last minute. Beans oddities or oddballs, whichever way you want to call it.
Oh, God knows. I mean, that's yet to be decided, surely.
All right.
But I'll explain. So April for me was like a month of two halves, and like outside of this, I've been talking about how I'd sort of reached a bit of a plateau with like listening to new music. The first half of April, I just wasn't tuned in at all. And actually, it was the Bristol weekend though, so we went away together. And I kind of reached this point of fatigue. It's like I can't, I'm not taking in new music. We went to Bristol, had a great weekend, and we're listening to new bands, and it just ignited something. It kind of reignited what I needed to just go out there and explore. So, I'm in a frenzy after that, listening to everything that's come out. Certainly in the back end of April. Came up with some gems, so that there's loads of stuff that we're not going to talk about in detail on here, but the Full of Hell album came out. I love that. Band called Pentagram, like Chilean band called Pentagram, so not the Pentagram that you're probably all familiar with, but absolutely fantastic, kind of like Beneath the Remains era Sepultura they remind me of, which is a bit of a lazy comparison given that they're sort of from the same part of the world.
I like that one.
Yeah, Nogathula are another band, kind of tech metal band, a tech death band that really fucking blew me away. Just like some real fucking unbelievable riffs. Telluric Sepsis, that album's called, so that appeals to my fucking.
I swear,
that's on my filth radar. And Utter Tomb was another one. Nebulas of Self-Desecration. So that's all the kind of heavy stuff I was absorbing. But in amongst it all, there was some really curious stuff that sort of came onto my radar, and I was thinking, do you know what? We should mention this. So I've got three that I've picked out, and the first one is probably the least mad out of all of them, and that's Tomorrow's Rain. So, they put out an album called Ovden, and they are Israeli, I think. So an Israeli metal band. Kind of gothic metal, another band that features saxophone actually, and kind of that's what makes them a little bit weird, because in amongst all this metal they have these really kind of low-key moments where it's almost sort of like loungy, and with the influence from another culture and another country coming in, it just makes it for a really unconventional, interesting listen. So it tends to be the stuff where they kind of pull back on the metal a little bit are the most interesting points of that album. But gothic metal, Tomorrow's Rain, Ovdan, check it out. It's interesting. And then going back to something Ant said at the beginning of the episode about black metal and how the production, it can veer into the absolutely ridiculously lo-fi, like you said, like the kind of true Kvelt. I wanted to highlight a band called Death Witch, which was one of the first bands I came across, when I was just checking out the new releases. And it is lo-fi to the point of ridiculousness. I mean, in a month where kind of Dark Throne have put out an album and, they're kind of famously, it's talked about how lo-fi and simple they keep things. I mean, this takes that and just pushes it right to the extreme end of the needle. You've got the approximation of a drum kit in there somewhere that sounds like someone's 4-year-old cousin has kind of has been allowed to sit behind the kit and tap out some rhythms. In lieu of a guitar, you've got a violin. So again, we're talking about more unconventional instrumentation. But what I wanted to say, it's not an easy listen, but there's something compelling about it. And I sat there and I listened to the whole damn thing, and I can't tell you why. The production is shocking. It sounds shit by anyone's standards, but there's something in it. I mean, we've talked about the kind of music from the neck down. I mean, this is that like music from the neck down and down and down and down. It's pretty primal, but curious. So Death Witch, check them out. And-
Which is that a new album or?
Yeah, it's a new album. It's an April release, so I think April 19 that one came out. I'm not sure, but
Okay, so I can't seem to see it on the platform. So
they describe themselves as primitive, barbaric black metal meets avant-garde violin. So
Of
there
course.
you go. Yeah,
That's my favorite genre.
it's got its own section in HMV now.
Well, yeah, so it should.
Yeah.
Fucking hell.
Anyway, look, the other one I wanted to mention was Corpachuli, and I hope I've pronounced that right. But this is a Finnish band, kind of blackened folk metal. But this is worth mentioning just for the cover alone, because that's
Yeah,
what
I've got it in front of me. It's bonkers.
that is what stood out to me. So if you can imagine an image, a lovely sunset, and in this picture, it looks like there's an assassin who's murdered a monk with an axe for reasons that aren't really clear on the, on this on the cover. Now, bizarrely, the assassin is wearing skis. Which is the thing that kind of threw me. And then in the background, presumably the monk's horse has kind of run off. And he looks like it looks like a kind of a Lowry painting, the way this horse is sort of like off in the background. Really, really bizarre. Musically, you put it on and it's, it starts out as a fairly standard folkish black metal album. But then you get about a minute into the title track, and then it sounds like they've ushered in like Jim Henson's Workshop and the Pogues and got them to do backing vocals, and then they just stay there for the rest of the album. And then there are these like orchestral flourishes as well that sound like kind of James Bond-esque sort of orchestral things going on in the background. It all sounds a little bit like kind of a jaunty Oktoberfest as it goes on, but it's utterly bonkers. So
It's quite listenable though. To be fair, it's quite enjoyable.
It is. Look, and I'm not saying any of these albums are going to be there. Like they're not going to be for everyone. But I just thought it's worth shining a spotlight on some of the stuff that's coming out because it's it's interesting and in its own way it's compelling.
There you go. Right, we'll see you again next month for a bit of that. Right, let's talk about Motley Crue. Not for too long, but I think we have to talk about the fucking single. Singles titled Dogs of War. Now, a couple of months back, Bean, you went to that Underworld show, which they did as the secret show as Dogs of War. All great. You loved it. You're a big Crue fan, whatnot. Right. Sometimes a band just shouldn't bother. And this is one of those occasions. So I think let Padre have this one first because yeah, just because.
I don't know where to start. I mean, I think the thing that just came to mind when I listened to it and then I read the lyrics as I was listening to it, and I just thought, who gave them permission to release any more material? This is a band that are just desperate to kind of maintain any shred of relevancy. Like, firstly, the title Dogs of War is not a bad name for a song, but not for those fuckers. Okay, that is a waste of. It's like, like you said, Massive Attack is a good name for a thrash metal band. Dogs of War is a good name for a metal song, just not befitting. It's too much for that band. It's like, I get it. Motley Crue were big in the 80s, but do you know what else was big in the 80s? Wimpy Burger, and look where they are now.
Do you know what? I'm a slight aside here. I was walking down the street the other day and I saw them opening a new Wimpy Burger restaurant.
There you go.
Like, what fucking universe does that happen?
There's a new one in Tunbridge.
There you go. See, the revolution is kicking off.
Yeah.
Sorry, back to Motley Crue.
I really would. I mean, if there's two things from the 80s I really would like to see the back of, it's Motley Crue and trickle down economics. Like, just get rid of both of them. Like, but they both seem to be still like they've got this pervasive grip on on people. Like, I get like Motley Crue were if you look at them, they went out of fashion. They became completely irrelevant very, very quickly. And I have a sneaking suspicion that they've looked at maybe the Pam and Tommy TV show, and they're thinking, well, there could be a window of opportunity that we might be able to claw something back. No, it's done. It's finished. Okay. The only reason anyone watched that TV show, I did, was because of the actress playing Pamela Anderson. And you're thinking, okay, she's quite fit, right? Now, you know, we're all the same age.
And Tommy Lee's talking cock.
We all kind of came into our sexual enlightenment. You know, we all came into our sexual enlightenment basically with Baywatch on TV, on ITV on a Saturday evenings. Okay. So that's basically why I watched that TV show. But and it's, I think with Motley Crue, it's a case of, are they more famous because of their escapades rather than their music? A lot of those bands from that era, some of them slowly drifted out of like the limelight. But Motley Crue were basically done after like 1991, and like there's a reason why. Like even like for example, a band like Slayer, like they've never come up with like a multi-platinum album, but what they've always had is authenticity. They've had a lot of goodwill from the fan base, and even people that don't like Slayer will say, "Yeah, I get it. They're a good band. That you know they know how to perform live. Like they're about the music." Whereas Motley Crue were just it feels like sometimes when you look back at them, they were a marketing stunt just as much as they were a band, and like just not very good at it either. Because like if you're going to look at a band like that, it's Kiss. That's how you do it. But then looking at the lyrics, like it's so juvenile, and it's like, oh look, words that have similar vowel sounds and they rhyme. Let's put them together. You know, it's like a 5-year-old could write better lyrics than this. And it's like, did you hear that the first 3 or 4 lines of the song? It's like bastards. It's like, oh my god, you're so edgy. You've just said a swear word. You know, I mean, Vince Neil was never a good singer. Tommy Lee is a middling drummer. The only good musician in that band is Mick Mars,
and he's not in the band anymore.
And he's not in the band.
He's
anymore.
not even in the band. Yeah, and like Nikki Sixx is like, you know, how many other people? How many heroin overdoses has he had?
Not
like,
enough.
Could one of them just not have killed him off?
Like, right. I mean, let me just.
I think someone needs to step in,
right? Because I want to come at this as from the perspective of someone that I would call myself a fan of Motley Crue up to a point. So for me, back in like 1991,
Motley who?
Yeah. Well, we'll get to that. You know, I would, to this day, the first 2 Motley Crue albums stand up to me. Stand up. I think they're excellent. You know, there's a lot of value in them. You know, they're naive and they're cheesy, but there's an energy there that I really enjoy. You know, Dr. Feelgood was a great pop metal album. Great songs. I would say that even 1994, the self-titled Motley Crue album that they did without Vince Neil, so John Corabi on vocals, is excellent. I would say anyone listening to this, check out that album because it stands up. It's this kind of anomaly in their career, but it's a great heavy rock album. Really good.
It's interesting you say that. And I'm sorry, I'm interrupting briefly here, but I've read positive things about like what Warren did around that time. I think their album after Cherry Pie during the grunge era.
Right. Well, there's a thing. It's interesting because grunge seemed to do good things for a lot of glam rock bands. You know, even like Poison released Native Tongue around that time, and they just brought in some kind of edgier, growlier sounds. And, you know, a lot of the blues was coming back into that sort of pop metal sound. Yeah. Anyway, you know, maybe that's a discussion for another time. But Primal Scream, 1991, I think, I would say is an excellent single. So Motley Crue are, as far as I'm concerned, capable of great things. I saw them at the Underworld gig last year, and I thought it was excellent. I really enjoyed myself. And like, ironically, they billed themselves as the Dogs of War that night. You know, it was a secret gig. So I had high hopes for this single. And release day came and I put it on, and oh my God, the disappointment. I mean, it just sounds bolted together. It sounds like a group of men that have gone, well, what are the kids like? New metal? Yeah, okay, let's let's stay relevant by playing some kind of cod new metal riff. Um, Padre's already talked about the lyrics. They're fucking dog shit. Like
They're appalling. Some of the worst.
I printed them off just so I could read the opening refrain. Other than bastards is don't let the dogs of war come knocking at your door as we're crawling across the floor. They'll make your skin crawl. They'll make the stars fall. Do they matter after all? I mean, fucking hell, this is like scribbled out on the back of a beer mat.
It's offensive.
It
It's
sounds
so
like
bad, it's offensive.
it sounds like they don't give a shit. It sounds like a band who, right? So it sounds like it's music made by people that don't listen to music. That's my take on it. That's how it sounds to me. And I've used this criticism before when we've talked about like the latter day Megadeth stuff. It's like I don't understand what music Dave Mustaine listens to. It's not apparent. He doesn't seem enthusiastic about his own kind of passion for music. So when he plays, that comes across in the songs he writes. He's passionate about playing the guitar. I get that comes across, but like what kind of enthuses him and the energy you get from listening to music, none of that's going in. And what Motley Crue have done with this new single is that times 10. It's like they've turned up at the studio, right? What's the minimum we can get away with doing? And they've done that. And then it's like they've handed it over to the producer and said, right, turn that into something. And then they've all gone off to
This is the problem though with these bands like this. It's you've got a mix of this extreme laziness and pragmatism, and at the same time, they've still retained these massive egos.
Yeah,
so for example,
the level of arrogance of this is unbelievable.
We've joked about this before, but look,
yeah,
we will go into a studio and just come up with this utter dross, but but in our minds, we will go and book Wembley Stadium with Def Leppard, and we won't even fill it by a quarter, and it just looks pathetic. And they are legends in their own minds. Def Leppard, I don't mean Def Leppard. I've got a lot more patience for Def Leppard. Like I will listen to Def Leppard. To be brutally honest, cards on the table, I think Girls, Girls, Girls is a decent track, and I like the guitar riff for it. But that's about as far as I go with Crue. And it's got nothing to do with any kind of LA strip, glam, thrash metal rivalry or anything like that. I just think they're shit. And I just think, singing about drugs and booze and pulling girls is fine. You're 21, you're 25, whatever it is. But that's only going to get you so far. And when you sing about a scene, you haven't got the legs to take you past 10 or 15 years, because you just so quickly become irrelevant. And that's what they are. They're completely irrelevant. They've got nothing. And I agree with what you said about Megadeth as well. Like, I don't know what Mustaine is singing about anymore. And I think
there's a song on the new Megadeth album called Junkie, right? And you'd think if Mustaine could write about anything in a really eloquent, insightful way, it would be about addiction and kind of the journey he's been on. And then you listen to the lyrics, I can't recall them off the top of my head here, but like it's such this kind of like clunky, this clunky lyric about being a junkie. You think, come on, man. Like, you've lived this. You can write this, surely.
Yeah, dig a bit deeper, Dave. Come on.
If some of these bands came out and said, look, we are very grateful to our fans, and we're going to keep touring, but look, we're not going to write any more material because we don't think we've got anything left to say, and we're more interested in just like kind of staying in touch with our early days, and making sure that maybe you can bring your kid to one of our concerts and see us perform some of our tracks that you saw when you were the same age, and we'll be a legacy band. I'd have a lot of respect for people like that. I'd say, fair enough, because look, is it Father Time doesn't do any jobs? Okay, he's undefeated. Okay, we're getting older. We're getting older. They're much older than us. I don't expect them to come out and have a full head of hair. And look at pictures of Vince Neil. He's got a bit of middle-aged spread on there. Who cares? He's in his, how old is he now? In his 50s? 60s.
He's going to be around. He's going to be floating around 60.
I was
Yeah.
going to say he's on.
Yeah,
the
I mean,
spectrum.
like, I don't expect to see him like, you know, looking gaunt and, you know, like he's been on the fucking junk. Like, you know, that's not what we want. But just don't insult people with this utter tripe. And, like, you know, we'd have a lot more respect for you if you just said, look, we'll play our stuff. We're not going to be releasing new material because we think that's a young man's game. Because, and it's the same. I think it's the same with Metallica now. I don't want to see them do another album. Just tour. Give the people what they want.
Well,
I don't know
Metallica
if
for me
have they got it in them. I'm not knocking 72 seasons, but
Yeah.
you know, it's like, what have you got left to say?
well, interesting. Like
Megadeth definitely should stop.
just going
Yeah,
back to that
100%.
point about you know, kind of what you know, thinking about Mustaine or Motley Crue as kind of fans of music, and then you see that footage of I think it was Hetfield and Hammett like dancing to Judas Priest at the Power Trip Festival.
Yeah, that was cool.
Yeah.
And you realize that they still connect, you know, they're still
Yeah.
fans, they've still got that fire in their bellies to listen to bands. And there are some musicians out there making music what it's not perceptible to me. I don't understand. I can't connect with the idea that they actually listen to
I mean,
music.
I think when I say like I don't want to see Metallica release another album, and that's not because I don't. It's not because I think that they haven't got it in them. It's because I think I've kind of thought a lot about this recently, and it's very easy to lob grenades at them and go, St. Anger is bad and load and reload. And I make a lot of jokes on this podcast and a lot of jokes in real life about this kind of stuff. But I'm also very protective of that band because they're one of my favorite bands. One of the reasons why I'm on this podcast. And you know, I've said this before in the last year or so. I've had a lot of mental health issues, and you know, it kills your creativity. And you know, I think you've got to give a lot of. We know Hetfield has got issues because it's very public, but we don't know about a lot of these other bands. Maybe to be fair, maybe Motley Crue are trying to do this as a way of resolving some of their own personal demons. I don't know, but is this the best way to go about it? And again, it's very easy to go like, "Oh, Dogs of War is utter shit," and you know, it's not good. But at the same time, it's like you kind of if you lack the civility and the humility, but Motley Crue don't. They've still got this idea that they're this amazing, massive super act, and they're not. And even at their heights, at their utter heights, were they really the same size as a Bon Jovi?
No, not even close.
No,
exactly.
no,
And
not even
that's my
close.
point. Were they ever going to headline? Did they ever headline Donington?
No.
They played it.
Yeah,
Exactly.
headline.
So that
Yeah.
you know,
No.
yeah.
no.
I
That
think-
was a bizarrely constructive view of Motley Crue. I was not expecting that.
Well, I'm going to leave you with these words from Vince Neil. Down, 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 down. Don't let them take the crown. Don't let those bastards get you down. Down.
and then when you look at it on on Spotify, just after the line that Beans has given you, you've literally got an entire screen with "whoa, whoa" like that, and I'm just like, there's more of that as vocal content in
There
the song
is-
than there is actual lyrics.
I think I can't remember which point in the song is, but there is. I don't know if it's a chorus or a bridge, but there's something where it sounds like he only wrote half of it. It's like he does a lyric and it follows up with another lyric. Then he kind of does a whoa whoa, and then he does a hoo yeah. But
I know.
Sounds,
And then have you seen that other bit in it where he just goes, "Get it," you know, like get what? What the lyrics leave no room for interpretation.
no.
Okay?
Anyway, look, the saving grace is Vince Neil has gone on record as saying, "Don't expect an album anytime soon." So maybe this was just an experiment to see, you know, test the waters or whatever. But you know, it was disappointing for me.
Right. Before we move on, voice of reason to get a word in 3 words. What do you think of it?
I wasn't impressed.
Well, all right. Okay. Very diplomatic. There you go. Right. Let's move on to something a bit more
You
positive.
only gave him 3 words, to be fair.
Oh,
Well, I was expecting something more along the lines of "it's fucking shit" or something like that. You know,
Motley Crue, who?
sorry. Just because I mentioned Metallica and St. Anger earlier, I think it's the 20th anniversary of them filming in San Quentin prison
Oh,
for the St. Anger video.
Yeah,
And I
it
read
was-
this really weird fact on it that the serial killer, the Night Stalker Ramirez, was at that prison,
fucking
and he's
hell.
apparently he's a big Metallica fan. But
Wow.
that week or that year, he was in solitary, and he describes it not being able to go to the concert as the worst day of his life.
Jeez.
Fucking hell.
Christ.
It
He's
makes
just
you
in
wonder how
solitary,
many.
and he can hear it, and he goes, "I want to go see the band." He goes, "Shut up! You killed 13 people. This is what happens. No Metallica for you.
Well, you know what?
Get
though?
in there
If
and think about what
you
you
killed
did."
13 people. Here's your punishment. Here's some anger.
Yeah.
They stick him in fucking solitary with them.
And someone off Marilyn Manson named himself after you. That's even
Yeah.
worse.
Fucking twiggy, fucking cunt. Anyway, let's move on. We'll do the last couple of albums, and then we'll cover off the last of the gigs and that, because we'll go off on a bit of a tangent. I want to quickly touch on Castle Rat, Into the Realm. I've been looking forward to this album for a long time after first, if anything, seeing them on social media, because it looks so fucking mental that I've got to hear what this band sound like. Checked out a song. It's sort of medieval fantasy doom with all the fucking costumes, the medicine man, all of that. It's mental. Sound wise, it is essentially doom, but what comes to mind is like Black Sabbath meets Jefferson Airplane. The vocalist Riley Pinkerton is her name, but she goes by the name the Rat Queen.
Oh, they've got great pseudonyms. You got the Rat Queen, the Count, the Plague Doctor, and the Druid.
Yeah, fucking absolutely fucking brilliant. And the whole sort of package, the whole concept works really well. And this album is fucking great. I believe this will probably be in my top 10 or 20 by the end of the year. One particular song, Red Sands, just her voice just sounds incredible at times.
Yep.
Just so powerful, and it just suits the music beautifully. Visually, they're amazing. There's a video knocking about for one of the singles, which is like an LSD trip. I just love the whole package.
On the visual front, like they credit Frank Franzetta, the artist, as one of their biggest influences. So he's the guy that did all the like Molly Hatchet covers and Nazareth, like all those old albums.
He did a lot of comics.
That's it, right? Yeah. So and it comes across, visually. They've got the costumes and the blood and all that stuff. So it's great. I really enjoyed this. The spirit of kind of 1968 to sort of 1972 is strong with this band.
Yeah, it's fucking great. I've been listening to it non-stop. I'm waiting to be able to try and pick up the vinyl for a reasonable price, but there's been no UK release, so it's sort of like a north of 40 quid job. So it's can't really quite justify that, but there you go.
Christmas and birthdays.
Yeah, a bit of that. Although that's December, I'm not waiting that long. Fuck that. Voice of Reason, have you had listened to this?
I have. I mean, it's not really my sort of thing. I'll be quite honest about that.
That's fair.
I mean, there is a sort of appealing, dreamy quality to it, though. So I can have it on in the background. There's a vibe to it that I can appreciate at the very least. And I think live, I'd be willing to give them a go. But I can't really say more than that. And
they'd be great playing with is Green Lung.
Yes,
that would work. That would work perfectly.
They would fit. Yeah, I can see them. I can see them certainly doing something good underground at Helgi's.
Yeah. Helgi's perfect.
Oh, do you know what? That'd be such a great night out. Imagine that.
Yeah. Right. But we'll come back to Green Lung at the end of the episode. The last album I want to talk about is one that was kind of dropped it like midweek, didn't they? Brazen by FLAMEBEARER. Now we so Bean's band The Grudge, you played with FLAMEBEARER last year, didn't you? And we saw them in Bristol as well. They were probably the band of the weekend. In Andrew Valiant, the front man, they've got one of the best in the business. They really have, an absolute fucking nut bar, but in the best possible way. Glam Doom, I think, is what we're calling FLAMEBEARER going forward.
I think that sums it up perfectly.
If Black Sabbath were a glam